Thank you everyone for joining us at today's Meetup Live. I'm Ashley DiGianelli. I'm a Senior Product Manager at Meetup. Today, I'm joined by Meetup organizers, Deborah, Maxwell, and Mike. We're going to be discussing event fees. You'll learn how to assess the right amount for your next event and communicate about event fees with your group members. So I'm going to start by introducing Deborah. Deborah is a board certified life coach, speaker, and author of the book, Heal Your Heartache, 5 Steps to Reclaim Your Life After a Breakup, Divorce, or Loss of a Partner. She's also a professional jazz vocalist. She's founded and organized multiple meetups, including single groups and women support groups. She's the current founder and organizer of Women 50 Plus for Friendship and Fund in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and the co-organizer for SEMO, the Society of International Meetup Organizers, an online support and friendship group for meetup organizers. She's also one of the original organizer mentors on Discord. Thank you for joining us today, Deborah. Alrighty. Next, I'm going to introduce Maxwell. Is a head organizer for the LGBTQ+ meetup group, the Non-Scene Friends, with almost 10,000 members in the greater Boston area. They run fun events for the LGBTQ community, including mini golf, pottery painting, game nights, dinner, and a movie, karaoke, brunch, and much more. Max enjoys connecting people together. He has a bachelor's degree in political science with a concentration in public administration and is a huge Star Trek fan. Max is a mental health advocate who strives to connect people together and gave the 2019 Mass Bay Community College commencement address on overcoming adversity. Welcome, Max.
Thank you so much for having me.
And last, but certainly not least, I'll be introducing Mike, who is an avid photographer with 40+ years of experience. Mike now runs 3 meetup groups in Ottawa, Canada. Each group caters to different photographic interests and runs between 1,000 and 3,000 members. He's been doing meetups for over 10 years, and it's not unusual to have 3 to 5 in-person events in 1 week. That is a very busy schedule. Via the meetup group, he offers hands-on guidance to new as well as experienced photographers alike. His greatest reward is seeing photographers grow in their skills and confidence and sharing beautiful work that they likely could not have achieved without Mike's patient support and guidance. Welcome, Mike. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
All righty. I will be taking us through some discussion, asking questions of our panelists. But before I do that, I just want to cover our guidelines for this event. So this event will be recorded. You will not be appearing in the video, but the video will be available for later viewing. We've muted your audio as a courtesy during the event. If you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And closed captioning is available. To turn it on, click on the live transcript icon at the bottom of your screen for your selected preference. So we just did our introductions. I'll be taking us through a discussion that'll take most of the time we have together, and then we'll try to make sure that we give 15 minutes to answer your questions. All righty, thank you all. I would love to hear a little bit more about each of your groups. So, Deborah, I'm gonna start with you for this question. Can you share a little bit more about your groups that you run?
Sure. When I first started Meetup, I had a group for women that were going through breakup or divorce, and then that parlayed into a group for singles, because once the women were starting to feel confident again, they wanted to mix and mingle with other people. And so I ended up with a singles group. Both of these groups were in South Florida prior to COVID. And at the end of COVID, or the end of the pandemic, what seemed like the end of the pandemic, I moved up to Massachusetts and I started a group up here. And the one I'm currently doing is Women 50 Plus for Friendship and Fun. I decided I wanted this not to be a support group, not to be a singles group, just to be a group for women that wanted to get together and have friendships. It's for married women, single women, women in relationships, doesn't matter, because as we know, as women, we all need female relationships. So that I'm actually parlaying into a travel group as well for women that are looking to travel more with other women. So it seems like the groups metamorphosize the way they do naturally and organically, and I don't have anything to do with that. But this group is such a positive group. I'm really excited to be doing this. And also I am the co-organizer for SIMO, which is the Society for International Meetup Organizers. And we are an international group online all the time. And any organizers out there that are looking for support, that's the group to look for. Thanks.
Fantastic. Max, can we hear a little bit more about your group?
Absolutely. So the Non-Seen Friends is one of the largest the largest LGBTQ meetup group, inclusive group in the United States or North or South America. And we I took over the group, but really for me, it's been a great way to make friends in the LGBTQ community. And it's been really difficult, sort of, the only really aren't a whole lot of other places to meet other LGBTQ people. You have to really look hard for them. So it's been a great way to do fun events, like I said, pottery painting, dinner and a movie, just stuff, just stuff to do and hang out and, have a good time and socialize and to provide that safe space for people. So it's really a great way to make new friends.
Excellent. And Mike, can we hear a little bit more about your photography groups that you run and support?
Absolutely. So I ended up taking over a group about 10 years ago, and it was just a general, typical meetup group. People walk around, take a few photos, end up at a bar and chat. So that was great, but it wasn't really photography. So I ended up looking at creating other groups that were really focused on training people, coaching them, helping them with their photography, and ended up with one group that grew and grew and grew. And it was general, like nature, landscape, travel, etc. When we started getting into doing people, portraits, boudoir, that type of thing, some people went, I don't want to see your beach babes, I'm a grandmother, I want to take pictures of my grandkids. And I went, okay, great. So I created a private group, which essentially focuses on people, portraits, fashion, glamour, that type of thing. So there's 2 public groups and a private group. And I didn't know there were 3,000 photographers in Ottawa. Most of my events are small. Like a studio can typically only hold, 4 or 5 people. An outdoor event at a beach might have 20, 30 people. And after that, I mean, we're stepping over each other. So I do lots of events, but most of them are pretty small and they're almost all in person. Very rarely do I do virtual stuff, except for maybe a training or teaching type videos.
Excellent. I'd love to stay with you, Mike, for this next question, which is, how long have you been charging event fees? I know you just shared that you've been an organizer for 10 years. And do you remember why you first decided to charge event fees for your groups?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, people were doing things on a shoestring. They'd go out and take pictures of the fall leaves, or they'd go out, in the street and take pictures of a busker festival or something like that. And I wanted to do more elaborate things. I wanted to hire professional models. I wanted to bring people into an upscale photo studio. I wanted to bring in photographers that were, world class and pay them for presentations and stuff like that. So first thing I did is I actually created a $5 a year membership fee, just because I wanted to cover my meetup, what I would call hosting fees. But then I started creating events that required funding, and we'll get into a little bit more detail later, but it's really about cost sharing. So that's what I started doing is right away. And quite frankly, it's allowed us to do a lot of things that have made the group way more successful.
Excellent. Excellent. Max, how about you? Do you remember when you first started charging event fees and how you came to that decision?
Yeah, well, I know like most organizers, really the charging event fees sort of came out of way. We've had a lot of issues having people come when they RSVP. And so, we started having events when we sort of transitioned midway through the pandemic into having more events in person. We needed a way to get an accurate head count for people, especially when we do like a reservation at a restaurant or something like that. We have a limited number of seats. And so it wasn't really a matter of making money or having expenses, but we just really need some people who have some skin in the game, so that we know that when we have an event and you run makeup, you commit to coming, that you'll show up. And so we sort of developed a policy around that and started putting that into place.
Excellent. And Deborah, how long have you been charging event fees? Why did you first decide to charge them?
Initially, for the same reason, basically to cover meetup costs. And initially I was hesitant to do it, but I found that if I did charge event fees, people did show up, as Max said. And I think that was really important. They had a little skin in the game. Also, it forced me, to be honest with you, it forced me to really create more value in my meetups, because I knew that I was charging. I knew that people were going to have to pay something to be there. And I started doing workshops. I started giving a lot more value in my groups. Even in my singles group, I made sure that each person had to meet 3 new people every time they came. So I put a lot more effort into my meetups because I was charging more, because I was charging for them. And so I think that made a big difference too.
Excellent. I'll just leave this one open, whoever feels like jumping in first. Ken, how did your members react when you first started charging for events?
I love this question because I was in South Florida at the time when I first started charging, and I had this woman say to me, "What is the $5 for?" She was really got in my face. And then I also had a gentleman. Okay, I think I got muted by mistake. I also had a gentleman come up and ask me why I was charging. At that particular one was $8. It wasn't very much. And later, both of them told me that I certainly could have charged more, for the value I was giving. So that was, great testimonial. Just funny stories about how people feel. So I didn't really get much pushback at all, not at all.
Let me jump in here. So because I was the new guy on the block, everyone kind of went, "What are you doing now?" When I added a fee, it split the group. I have some people in my membership that never come to anything except my free events, and I still do some free events. Typically free events, I don't care if anybody shows up. So if I'm going to be walking in the forest and I say, I'm doing a nature walk on Wednesday and 15 people want to come, great. If 30 RSVP and 3 show up, that's fine too. I don't care. But if I need people to show up at an event for restaurant or whatever, and I'll get into more details as to how I handle those later, then definitely there's a fee. And for the others who are paying the fees, quite frankly, they are excited and really anxious to do something really upscale and different. And my events often sell out within minutes or even a few hours. So my biggest issue is dealing with wait lists.
Excellent. Max?
I think that mostly people see, that, we're doing this for a reason. We have a certain amount of space, or we need people have skin in the game, that kind of thing. There have been a number of cases where, we don't sort of, the value we add isn't as obvious. And like have an event in a park or something. Well, the park's free. Why, you shouldn't be charging an event in a park. So I've gotten a little pushback, and I think I did that once, and like I provided some goodies and stuff for people who came. But ultimately, I haven't had a lot of pushback. Sometimes people ask, well, where does it go? People want to know what it's used for. And I think as long as you're transparent about that, that could be, it can be pretty positive. And I had one person who said that people who come to the events are more committed, who more sort of invested in participating and socializing because they had to pay for that. And I think the attendees of the event really recognize that.
Excellent. On that note, knowing that sometimes you get pushback or sometimes not at all, can you share your rationale and what your system is for charging event fees. I know everyone has a little bit of a different approach to how they decide what to charge.
Okay, I'll go. I give people options. They can either pay at the event. I've done that sometimes. In cash. I've done that sometimes. When I have a group, when I know that the people that are coming are solid and they've been coming a lot. But now what I'm finding that is easier to have people just Zelle me or Venmo me. And I post my Zelle and my Venmo right in the event description. So I make it very, very clear. I also can accept credit cards because I am a business, and I can do PayPal as well. So I give them lots of options. I try to really push them toward the things like Zelle and Venmo that aren't going to cost me any fees. And I have been known to charge an extra $5. If I'm charging $20, I might charge $25 if they're paying by credit card, whatever. And I've never really had much pushback about that. I also, by the way, put a little note at the bottom: if you can't afford to pay and you would like to attend, please come anyway. Just email me or contact me. And I've had some people pay it forward, where they've paid for other people ahead of time just in case. So I think it all depends on how you approach your group and how much they know that you really care about them.
That's really great. I love to hear that people pay it forward. Max?
I love the pay it forward as well. I tell my group that the fees are really cost sharing. We are all contributing towards doing something that we want to do together. So it's not unusual for me to actually state right in the description, your fees this time are going to the rental of the studio, the payment of a model, and a professional makeup artist. So if I have a $150 studio, a $200 model, a $100 makeup artist, that's $450. I know the studio can accommodate 5 people. Then that divides it to $90. I'll add an extra $5 to cover PayPal fees. So everyone contributes $95. And I'm amazed at how many people come out to events that are $90 to $150, but they know that I'm not making a profit. We're just sharing the cost and doing something that if they had to do it themselves, they'd have a $450 photo shoot.
That's excellent. Great point. That you're transparent about where the costs are going to. Max, how about you? What happens for your group?
So one of the things, we do in terms of payment processing, sometimes we'll use the PayPal through Meetup. We don't usually collect cash in person that much. Usually the whole point is to get people to RSVP and sort of commit to that ahead of time. Sometimes if we're having an event with another organization we're co-sponsoring, we'll use like a third-party ticketing platform. As a nonprofit, sometimes we have access to a platform called GiveButter. And so we'll sometimes you have more options in terms of like coupon codes, or if you get bulk discounts for tickets, there's different ways to do it so that you can have more options for that kind of thing. And one of the things that, and then just in terms of, being transparent about, we use the fees for, we will use it for vet supplies, for a Meetup subscription. And I do feel like sometimes, we provide reimbursement for organizers to do certain things and participate in the activities, just because they're putting a lot of time and effort into doing those things. And I mean, for me personally, I realized that one week I was putting 20 hours a week into the Meetup group, and I'm like, that takes a toll on me. So being able to offset the cost for me personally is important to me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's something. Max, you talked about compensating your co-organizers. One of the things that I also do is encourage a number of people to organize events, not just me. So I want the group to reflect not just my photographic interest, but everyone else. So when we're doing something with, hiring a studio or doing this or doing that, usually the organizer doesn't count themselves in the loop. So essentially, if it's a $450 charge and there's 5 people coming plus the organizer, we divide by 5. So the organizer is doing it free, or getting to do whatever it is that we're doing free. So as a result, people sometimes ask me, why aren't you making a profit, or why aren't you trying to make a profit? And I say, are you kidding me? I do 150 to 200 wonderful, fun shoots every year, and it doesn't cost me anything. So I'm very happy, and my co-organizers like the perks of running their own events, because then they get off with zero charge for a very fun event.
Excellent. I'd love to know how you show the value to your members for these events that they're worth paying for. I know, Deborah, you shared earlier that the first time you charged for an event, folks came up to you afterwards and said, hey, you should be charging a bit more for this. So I'd love for you to share how you found the right balance.
So I think the combination, by the way, this is Rocky and he is my Zoom mascot. So I hope no one minds, but whenever I'm sitting here, he's always up here. I think he likes the sound of other people's voices. So initially, when I started charging, I made sure that I also did some free events in between. And the free events were chats. Sometimes they were just, maybe meeting somewhere, maybe having dinner, where I knew that my members were going to be paying for dinner or paying for something else. So I still do that. I have 6 other organizers, and they do a lot of events, art shows and archery events and all kinds of things where maybe my members have to pay a fee to the place that they're going. When I do events that I'm charging for, I'm literally doing workshops. And so I'm putting a lot of value into that. I'm giving a lot back. I'm doing workshops either on self-improvement, or workshops on improving your state of being or happiness, or I'm doing workshops on grief, enabling yourself to get away from grief, to feel better about your life, whatever. So those are the kinds of things that I charge for. I don't just charge for people to come and sit in a bar or a restaurant and talk. That's, if we're doing something like that, then that's a free event. I've also done a lot of free events online, especially when I was trying to find event organizers. I would do leadership events online and invite people to come and tell me what they wanted to see, whether they wanted to organize or not, what kind of events they were looking for. So I think it's really important. If you're going to charge, you have to give value. I think Mike gives amazing value. I wish I could go to one of his events.
I think for me, I think, one of the things that makes Meetup special compared to some of the other services that have events is it's not about the events. The goal of Meetup is the social connection and connecting two people together. And so that's the real value. And so I think it is important to have events that are fun and, you invest in the actual event itself. But remember, at the end of the day, it's these people would not have that sense of social connection. Have you not put the event on? And so that's when people that pay for an event, that's the real value you're bringing. So don't just think about, am I having goodies? Am I having, am I having stuff? But think about, are you really doing the work to foster those connections within your event? Because that's really why you're there.
So for the photo shoots and stuff, what they're getting is very obvious. What's less obvious is, as our fellow panelists are doing, maintaining maximum attendance is important for me as well. So if I'm going to go to a restaurant, they're going to put aside an area for us, and they say we're going to have 30 people there, or 20 people there, and only 10 show up. I look like an idiot, and the restaurant doesn't want to see me again. So I have no problems telling everybody, hey guys, I want everybody to make sure that they arrive and they show up, and it's going to be $10 per person. And by the way, that $10 is going to go to some finger foods, so there'll be something on the table. And that way the restaurant guarantees to get a little bit of revenue. I hated showing up with 10 people and they all drank water, and I kind of went, yuck. So that was the case. And you can get creative. So I had a store, for instance, that specialized in theatrical lighting. I want to give us an overview of theatrical lighting versus photographic lighting. And so they had room for 10 people in their store, and I didn't want to show up with less than 10 people. So I said $10 per person. I put them together. I got a $100 gift certificate from the store, and I told everybody, hey guys, I want everybody to show up. And by the way, there's going to be a door prize of a $100 gift certificate. from the store that's giving us the presentation. So the store wins, they got their money. I got nothing, I'm fine. Everyone else paid $10 and it was like buying a raffle ticket for a door prize. So anyways, there's lots of ways of telling people that, you know, this isn't being pocketed, this is not for nothing. And amazing, $5. And all of a sudden, hey, I got called from work, can I have my $5 back?
Those are great points. I'd love to know, have you been able to offset your fees? I know that a lot goes into running a meetup group and that there's often other things that you're paying for aside from your meetup subscription. So I'd love to know if your event fees have maybe helped you with some of the costs that you take on as an organizer.
Yeah, I have to say that when I first started charging event fees, when I had my South Florida groups, I did it because I was keeping track of the money I was paying to Meetup for my Meetup fees. And I noticed I was keeping track right on the Meetup site. And I noticed that I was really in the hole for over $300 at that point. And I realized that's not really good business. So I started charging $5 here, $8 there, depending on the event I was doing. And very quickly, I started not only covering my Meetup fees, but my Zoom fees, because I was doing some online events. During COVID, I covered my website fee where I advertised my Meetup. So things like that, suddenly everything was covered. I wasn't interested in making a lot of money, but I will tell the other organizers out there, if you're not at least doing something to get the restaurant to comp you your meal or something, then you're spending a lot of money and eventually that causes burnout. And we don't want any of our organizers to burn out, you know, just because of financial problems. So I think it's important. I really do think it's important to think about how to cover your fees.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We love our organizers. We want you guys to be able to organize with us for as long as possible. Mike.
So because of the way I operate, then yes, I break even on every event, but I need 100% attendance. So that's the key thing for me. Is it's very, very important. My event often sells out very quickly, and I get a bunch of people who say, oh, darn, it's sold out, I'd like to come too. I keep them on a wait list. And as soon as one person says, oh, darn, the weather looks bad, I got a 3-hour drive, I don't think I'm going to make it, then I immediately substitute them with someone else from the wait list. It used to be automatic with Meetup. There used to be a nice little wait list feature where if anybody dropped out, everyone else would get an email saying, hey, there's a new seat. And the first person to pay would get that seat, but that feature is gone. Now, waitlist only works for unpaid events. So I have a whole manual process where everyone has to add notes to the comments. And if somebody drops out, I have to comment. I have to message everybody individually and then figure out who's going to jump in. And it's a lot more work now. I hope everybody says I want paid event waitlist again. That feature got dropped in a former management regime, I guess. But hopefully it'll come back. But anyways, the other thing I have to do is make sure there's a little bit of a slush fund to compensate for the fact that, well, what if I have a unpopular event and it's 90% filled? I still have, because I got a break even, I'm still missing 10%. So once in a while, I'll have a little bit of a slush fund, and just rather than cancel an event, then I will make sure that I got a little bit of slush fund. But I also have a go, no go date. So if the restaurant or the studio says, look, you got to tell me by Wednesday whether this is a go or no go. Otherwise, there's a fee for canceling. So I know what my no go date is for my studio, for my model, for my makeup artist. And if I don't have enough people by that date, then I'm just not moving ahead, and I'm not going to go ahead with an event that's going to cost me several $100s out of my pocket.
I actually just wanted to respond to something Mike said. I might have a solution for you, Mike. If instead of making the event, like closing the event or ending the RSVPs when it's full, you still have that event cap. So if someone drops off, then they could still sort of take the spot if someone drops off. Does that make sense? No, it's okay. He's muted. No, but and you could be creative with the event caps, where if you like for me, what I'm able to do is I might charge a early bird rate for the first 4, and I'll cap it at 4. and then I'll, then after Forest hit, I'll raise it manually back to a higher amount and then increase the amount who could RSVP. So you can have an early bird rate and a higher rate for an event.
Usually the issue is the event fills up. I don't need an early bird. It fills up very quickly.
Right.
The challenge is I've got 15 people who are waiting and 10 people coming. One of the 10 drops out, and I got to go find amongst the 15 that are waiting who wants to take the spot. And it's a bunch of messaging and whatever that I have to do manually.
Yeah.
I think usually, I mean, one of the things that I've learned is that if your goal is to set sort of just to cover your costs, that would make sense. If your goal is to sort of maximize how much money you make, you can actually, if you have a shortage and you want people who want the event the most to sort of be the ones who RSVP, you could raise the price, and the people who want it the most are the ones who are going to sign up. And one of the things about price is it's a very effective form of rationing. So if you find that you have a lot of events where you're selling out and people want to go in, or want to attend and they can't, then not necessarily for you to make a profit, but just for people to, people who want it the most could attend, raising the price can be a way to do that.
Yeah, agreed. I just have to rationalize, what am I going to do with the extra money? Because I really don't need it.
That's a nice problem to have, Mike.
All right. In terms of collecting the fees, I'd love to know, I know there's a few different platforms available. So I'd love to know what platforms do you use to collect your event fees?
As I said before, I primarily use PayPal and the platform called GiveButter.
Yeah, I use PayPal as well. And unlike Deborah, there is no such thing as cash at the door. I have to break even, and I cannot afford to have somebody say, I'll bring you cash, and then they don't show up, and then I have nothing I can do. So I always make sure that I'm prepaid in advance, and I love the integration between Meetup and PayPal. Anytime somebody RSVPs, I know, because of the way the system works, they've already paid. They can't RSVP if they haven't paid. And if I have to give somebody a refund, and Meetup knows that I've given them a refund because it tracks it back and forth. The other advantage of PayPal, by the way, is I collect email addresses, because everybody who pays me I get the email address from the PayPal message, and I get real names. So, Joe R is now has a real name next to it, as opposed to just some pseudonym that's on the Meetup. So I collect names and emails from my PayPal messages.
As I said earlier, I do use a number of platforms. I use Zelle and Venmo and PayPal, and I also can collect credit cards if I use credit cards if I need to. I don't do cash anymore. I did do cash when I was in South Florida pre-pandemic, because I had so many people coming to the singles event that honestly, if 10, 20 people didn't show up, it wasn't a problem. That's how many people I had coming. At one time, it was 40 or 50 people showing up, and it was just easier to do it that way. But I agree with Mike. If you want to make sure that you have people showing up, then they need to have a little bit of skin in the game, like Max always says too. Yeah, we need to get them to pay ahead of time. And I wanted to say one other thing too. I know that Max is doing a membership fee, and I know that we've had Meetup Lives on membership fees, and I think that's a good idea. You have to expect that some people are, or that a number of people are going to drop out of that group. You just have to expect that that's going to happen, and you have to be willing to do that. I did that in South Florida. I may do that with this group eventually. But I think the people that remain are the people that really care about the group and really are finding that they're getting a lot of benefit from it.
I actually saw that Jason had the question about membership fees as well. And I personally don't have them. I find that we have a big pool of 9,000 people who see our events. And I know that if we charged a fee, I'd rather charge a fee when we have the event rather than when people sign up, because then we can have that list of people we send stuff to and keep on pulling people in. Whereas if we have a membership fee, people see the fee and they're not even going to really look at the group because they have a fee. We're not going to join. So that's kind of my philosophy around it. I'd rather charge at the event level.
Yeah, I should mention, by the way, that the fees change depending on whether you're US or not. So in the US, you charge a fee, people must pay the fee or they get kicked out. We don't have that in Canada. Fees are optional in Canada. So while they do state a fee, I think about 30% of my people do offer to pay it. The rest of them just ignore it. So it's almost like the pledge thing in Canada. It's not the same as the States. So what I do to encourage that, though, is if I run a virtual session, I'm going to say, I'm going to give you some Photoshop tips or so whatever. I say, by the way, this event is free for all the people who are paid up. And by the way, here's how you pay up, because the dues button is nowhere to be found on the app. So I have to give them a link to where they can find the dues button. And it's just a reminder that, hey guys, I mean, if you appreciate this stuff, I mean, do pay up your $5 annual fee. Still, I still don't get 100%, but it's good enough.
Excellent. I'd love to talk about how do you determine when it's time to maybe raise your prices? I know, Mike, for you, the amount that you charge is dependent on the space and the type of event that you're throwing. But if it's sort of a cost that you're determining for, like, let's say a standard event, how do you decide if it's time to increase the price for an event?
Yeah, so mine are pretty automatic, right? I mean, I add up my costs, I divide by the attendees, and it's fine. So after COVID, for instance, I found that models, spaces, makeup artists were charging way more than they were before. So I just took that price, divided it out, and I found it around the $100 mark. People are going, this is getting to be a pretty expensive event. And so what's happening is I just go back to the models or whoever and say, yeah, looks like you priced yourself out of the market. This event isn't going to happen or whatever. But yeah, I don't worry about it. I mean, I treat guest speakers, models, makeup artists, whatever, as independent business people. And if they price themselves out of the market, then no event happens and someone else gets to be the feature model or the feature speaker or whatever.
Max?
I think for us, I mean, we're cognizant of, we want people to connect together, so if there's less people, if we raise the price where less people come, that's not good. But at the same time, we also keep into price, can we charge more for if there is a shortage of seats or there's a limited number of seats, or if we are providing a certain amount of value to people, that we may raise the price to, what sort of what would be a fair market value or something like that. But I think that we try to balance our social mission with, sort of the mission with our ability to sort of offset our costs and put money aside for future organizing efforts.
Deborah?
Yeah, I have no intention of raising fees. I try to keep everything very minimum. As long as I'm covering my basic expenses, covering my meetup fees and things like that, I'm happy. And like I said, I do a number of free events as well. And I also incorporate events where my women have to pay, like to go to the theater or to walk into an art gallery, art event or something like that, music event. So and we do a lot of free events with my other organizers. So I have no intention of raising fees. I think the fees that I do charge are when I'm trying to fill up the capacity that I need at a particular event. And I try to keep them nominal, $5, $10, really, really nominal. And again, like Mike said, there's that opportunity you have where if you really want to make sure people are showing up at the restaurant, you can charge $10 a head. And if they come, then they're going to be able to partake of whatever food that you put on the table ahead of time. One of the things I do mention in my events also is if it's a restaurant or I do a bakery every other Sunday, and I always mention you must purchase something. You wouldn't think that you would have to say that, but we do. You must purchase something, a coffee or a drink or something. And most of my women tend to eat breakfast anyway, so it's great.
Max, Mike, anything to add? No.
Oh, it looks
I'd like to add one thing just as an advice piece to any organizers out there. If you're bringing a lot of people to a place, like I bring anywhere from 10 to 20 or more women to this bakery every other Sunday, and they are so appreciative. I finally decided after a few times that I would just ask them to comp my breakfast, and they do. So even if you're not charging for an event, you have the option of asking the venue to comp something for you, whether it's appetizers for the table. I mean, now they bring chocolate covered strawberries to us and things like that as well. But it's just the old adage, if you don't ask, you don't get. So it's just like asking your people for event fees. It's the same thing with venues. Venues would be very happy to help you, especially if they know you're bringing people to them.
That's great advice. I'd love to know if you feel that charging for your events has provided you more dedicated members, or maybe even helped you create better quality events.
I'll just say 100% and leave it to the others.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt.
Max, anything to add there? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, it's definitely allowed us to sort of explore different events and as well as sort of support some of. I think a lot of our events are very small. We don't have a lot of big events. We do have, but I think that they do allow us to sort of invest more in the group and support our membership a little bit more. So.
Great. My last question before we start taking some of the questions that have come in is, what advice do you have for organizers that are considering charging event fees?
I'll say two things. One, let people know where the money's going, so it's transparent and you don't have any pushback, what are you doing, etc. The second thing is that I found very useful is a very flexible refund policy. If someone's going to be paying up front, sometimes you're going to go, well, I'll make sure that I'm not, in work, or I'll make sure the weather's good, or I'll make sure this, I'll make sure that. And they all want to RSVP 20 minutes before the event, because then they know their money's being well spent. I don't do that. I just say, this model's coming in town 3 weeks from now. This is what, she's going to be charging. This is the studio we're going to be shooting at. And if you find at the last moment you can't come, no problem, 100% refund. I just have to refill. I just have to find someone else to replace you, or you have to come up with someone to replace you, and no questions asked, you get a full refund. So people don't, and they realize that there's so much of a wait list with my events that they no longer hesitate. The event gets posted, and I've got one guy who wrote a macro that would RSVP and pay for an event within 5 minutes of my posting it. He wanted to come to everything. So I said, look, this is unfair. Other people need a chance. But people knew that if they RSVP'd right up front, they could lock in that seat. And if they had to back out at the last moment, there was probably someone else who was around to take care of it. But if I didn't have that policy, everyone would wait until the last possible moment and RSVP. And then I can't confirm with the restaurant. I can't confirm with the studio. I can't confirm with the makeup artist, because it's appearing like no one's coming until, hours or days before the event. And I'd rather lock everything up 3-4 weeks in advance.
That's great advice. Thanks, Mike. Max?
So I think first off, you have to figure out what your purpose is for charging an event fee. So is it to offset your costs? Is it to nail down your RSVPs? Is it to if you have a quota? Is it to maximize profit? Is it to, what is the reason you're doing it? And I think that will provide sort of context with how you sort of figure out how much to charge. And I just want to, I guess one of the other things that's been on my mind, I think you could tell sort of the conflict in my face and from some of the answers I've been giving is You know, a lot of people approach Meetup around, you know, they're doing it for free, they enjoy doing it, it's a hobby. But for some people, it is okay. The conflict I've been having, is it okay to use Meetup as a business? And I think for some people, I'm trying to figure out if there's a way for me to do it. But that's I feel like there's a stigma around it. And I feel like, you know, when I think about it logically, you know, I'm putting a lot of time and effort and labor into it, and I'm not getting compensated. Should I be? You know, if you do this for other things, if you have a comedian in a orchestra hall, you know, doing stand up, like that's work. They find it fun. Is that worth being compensated for? So I really think that I'm still struggling with it. But if you think about it yourself and find, oh, maybe it is okay for me to be compensated for my time on Meetup. You know, is that okay? And ask yourself that. And then, of course, how do you present that to your members? Because that's the real challenge, because they don't maybe not see it the same way. So,
Excellent.
I think it's really important to remember the things that other people have told you when they've come to your Meetup, the experiences they've had, the people that have told you if it wasn't for your Meetup, they would have been, you know, in total lockdown even after the pandemic, that this gives them something to do every week, or this makes their life fuller, or whatever. I actually, in one of my Meetups, had a woman tell me that she felt that that particular Meetup, that was a Meetup for women that were going through divorce or breakup, she felt like it saved her life. That's something I heard really, really clearly. You know, I mean, we have to listen and know that, like Max said earlier, these are social events that people need. They really need this connection, and we're offering the connection. And it's okay to charge and be compensated for that, especially to cover expenses that you need to cover. In my case, even sometimes I've managed to cover my time that it takes me to put a workshop together. That doesn't always happen, you know, and I'm doing it for the love of it as well, but it's okay to be compensated. And I think a lot of times, you know, because no one becomes a Meetup organizer to make money. Let's face it. You know, we're all altruistic to some degree. No one becomes a Meetup organizer to make money, but covering your expenses is not a bad thing. It's smart business, you know, and it also prevents burnout, because it's really easy to get burned out when you're looking at all the money you're putting out there and you're not getting anything back, you know, and it's wonderful you're getting friendship back, but it's, you know, sometimes burnout just is really something we have to deal with. So I say do it, you know, and just do a minimum, charge $5 for an event, you know, and you'll find that you will get quality people coming to those events. And again, you can always put that little disclaimer on the bottom. If you can't afford it, please message me, and I would be happy to give this to you.
I would love to start with this question. It came in from anonymous, but their question is, if you were starting now, would you start off as a free event and then move into charging, or would you charge the first time? And did you call it a donation? They're asking in the context of starting a virtual cooking class, and they want to consider charging for their cooking class online.
So I need to break even with my event, so I can't afford to give anybody a freebie. But I occasionally will tell someone, hey, if you're not sure, come to an event and watch. You can't participate as a photographer. You can't sort of, you know, take pictures and be part of the event, but you can be a bystander and just observe.
originally, I did try to start a few other groups, and it's really hard when you're first starting out when you have a limited amount of membership, just because there's less demand. So it can take some time to kind of build up to the point where you can charge. But you know, because then there's less people who would sign up in any case. So so it can be tricky. I think it can help to get a free following first, then sort of build from there. Of course, when you transition, that might be a little tricky as well.
Yeah, I agree. I would start out with something free, give some kind of free or offering. And it doesn't have to be exorbitant. It can just be something simple, make a little, show them how to make a little dessert or whatever. I would start out with some free events to build your following and to get that credibility, because people, need to know, like, and trust you before they're going to start paying for your events.
Absolutely. The next question that I see is from Lori. Lori runs a gluten-free foodie group and charges $12 a year in membership fees to help her cover the cost of running a meetup group. And her experience has been that people give her a bit of a hard time for it. So she'd love advice on how to manage that, or if there's maybe a better approach to consider. Any thoughts there?
I think it's important to tell people where the money's going, number one. I mean, Mike mentioned that earlier, let her know. I think sometimes members don't realize that as meetup organizers, we're paying fees. And we're not just paying fees, but sometimes we're paying Zoom fees and we're paying other fees, and and our time involved in doing this. And sometimes even your time involved in answering the emails that people are sending you and the questions and all of that. It's just, it really is very involved. And so I think just explaining that and composing an email and sending it out to your members and letting them know that this is why you're charging.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Let me see. Oh, I think this is a really interesting question. I'm not sure if it applies to the way you guys run your groups now, but Eric asked a question around how challenging is it to blend free and one-off paid events under a single group. Do any of you have experience with that, of having some free events and some paid?
Yeah, so I have a lot of events that don't have a cost. If we're just, going out in the forest and take pictures of the fall leaves, but by all means, come along. So I also have what I call a number of networking events. So as I mentioned, a lot of my events are filled up very quickly, but I have a couple of open events. So in the fall, for instance, I have a fall fashion event, and in the spring, I have a spring fling event. And I just say, invite a bunch of photographers and a bunch of models, and nobody pays the models, and the models have to do their own makeup. We're not going to have professional makeup artists, and photographers don't have to pay a fee. We just all get together, we take pictures. And if the ratio of models to photographers is 10-1, too bad. I'm not guaranteeing anything. It's just a fun event. We're all getting together. So it's also a proving ground. So I have models who want to have events. And if they come to these events and they prove to be popular and they get along well with people and so on and so forth, then guess what? They're the ones who I hire for my professional events, because they've demonstrated some degree of capabilities and expertise and so on. So I have those. Plus, I have a few virtual events for Photoshop and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's very easy. You can just turn on the event fee when you create an event, or just leave it off, and they mix well together. And some people just come to the free events. That's fine. That sort of, the lurkers that only show up for free stuff. I see them all the time, but there's no reason why I can't mix them.
I've had no problem mixing the two. They actually, I've never even thought of this. I didn't even think about doing one or the other, just one or the other. I've always mixed them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to do a little of both. And again, people that come to the free events get to know you, and they'll know, like, and trust you. And then they may come to some of the paid events as well.
Yeah, it's great. There's a follow-up here. I believe from someone else that asked, for the organizers who host both free and paid events, what is your ratio of free versus paid events that you offer?
Usually for me, I mean, it's most of the events are probably free, especially when we've had online events or recurring events. Usually they're free. Usually things that don't have a cap, we can have as many people as we want to show up. You're usually free. It's usually the things that are, we have a limited amount of seating that we have paid.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. About 90% of my events are paid, because I usually have some venue or some costs or that type of thing that's out there. And in fact, some people use Meetup to fund an event. So I'll have a model come to me and say, can we do a mermaid shoot? And I'm going, oh, wow, okay, I got to buy a $150 mermaid tail. Okay, well, I'm not going to pay you as a model, but you can get to keep the tail when we're done. And she goes, good deal. So I have a $150 expense to buy a tail, and we go to a beach somewhere, and she's no cost. So I have a $150 event divided by 5 people, and off we go, $30 each, and we got a mermaid shoot.
I will add that a lot of the events that we don't charge for, usually people are buying something like food or movie tickets or something. So there is another expense to that too.
Right, I agree. Yeah, the same. It's the same with mine. I would say that probably half of my events, 50% are paid, but they might not be paid to me. They might be paid to the venue. They might be for food, or they might be for tickets to attend something. So it's so easy to mix them because you don't know what people want. And one thing I will say, if you're not sure what your people want, do online events, do a couple of online chat events. Come and tell me what you'd like to see for events in this group. And then if someone has a great idea, ask them if they want to be an organizer, and help you to do that.
I do want to say one thing that I have been cognizant of. We haven't really implemented. I mean, I think Deborah might have some comments on this, but we noticed that some, sort of our events could target certain people who are able to afford the events that we provide. That might have, if it's a ticket event, that might exclude certain people who might not be able to afford it. And so just keeping that in mind when you are charging, especially if you're an LGBTQ organization who cares about diversity, that's kind of important. So keep that in mind.
No, I agree. I think it's important to mix events and have some events that are free, totally free, concerts, things like that, other events that maybe have small fees, and some are going to be larger fees, and really mix it up. Yeah.
Excellent. If you can believe it, we're coming up to the close of our hour already. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you so much to Deborah, Maxwell, and Mike for your time and sharing your insights with us. Their groups and information will be pasted into the chat if anyone is interested in looking them up and seeing exactly how they have their meetup groups set up. I will share one more slide before we go. I just want to highlight something that Meetup has done for our organizers. We launched a Meetup organizer Discord community where you're able to meet fellow organizers from all around the world, get advice from mentors, organizers like Deborah who have many years of experiencing managing groups on Meetup, and hear about updates related to Meetup features. As a product team member, I can tell you that we love learning from the Discord community, sort of what's working, what's not working, where could we make improvements. So I highly recommend anyone who's interested in joining us. If you are interested, you can scan this QR code on the screen. And as a reminder, you'll get a full recap of this event in a few days on our Community Matters blog at meetup.com/blog. Thanks everyone so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.